Welcome to episode 61 of Masters of the Forge. My name is Adam, and unlike 2 episodes ago where it was just me telling you my silly story, today there are 4 people in the gender-neutral hobby cave. First of all, we have Snorre.
Yes, I'm back from the dead.
Yay! And we have James Stagg.
Hey everybody, glad to be back, but I am still undead.
Oh, no, you're not. You're a luxurious creature of the wild. You're like
I work at night and hide from the sun all day, man.
And we also have a special guest, Gav Thorpe, on. Hey, Gav.
Hello, I am a meat popsicle.
Thank you.
Excellent. So as you may have guessed, we're here to talk about the Beast Must, or not the Beast Must Die. Well, we will talk a little bit about that, but we're here to talk about the Emperor
We're
Expects.
excited about that.
Yes, we're excited about that. But we're going to talk about the Emperor Expects, and we're going to talk about Beast Arises in general, now that we have Gav's ear to chew on about that. But first, we wanted to use the intro this week to kind of get an idea of what Gav's been up to recently. I know, as of right now, we just had the Beast Must Die release. Which book is that, Gav?
That's book 8 in the series.
Mm-hmm. So we're in real time. We're almost finished, actually.
Nearly. I mean, another 4 months to go. So you're sort of a third behind, I guess.
Right.
Give or take.
Right.
So yeah, 12 volumes in total.
I think that is really great. I love how that there's like a actual end in sight, and we're gonna get a wrap up. But we'll talk more about that later. I loved how you did a was that your impetus to do the Beast Must Announce contest? I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, we did. We did the bit for the Emperor Expects. We did the Emperor Expects ... competition, which was really, really good and had a great response and a lot of laughs.
Uh-huh.
So having the Beast Must competition obviously seemed the natural successor. I'm trying not to come up with titles in the future that just make good competitions. There might be a couple. I don't know. So, yeah. It's been a good response to that as well. And we announced the winner on Friday, so they'll be getting a signed copy of The Beast Must Die sent to them in the post.
That's great. And I loved, it's just, you are so prolific on your blog. Like you are one of the authors who really just communicates with the community and really gets people whipped up about your work. And I think that probably reflects in kind of the responses you get.
Yeah, I'm in the advantageous position, I suppose, because I'm a full-time writer, and my partner, Kez, she actually works for me, organising a lot of the stuff. She kind of the new website's about just over a year old now. So she helped kind of pull that together and project manage getting that done, and she kind of organises and runs it day to day in terms of what needs to be done. So she can give me a list of, this is coming out here. We need to run a competition. You need to do this, and so I don't necessarily have to. I do it all, but I don't have to think about it. Her brain is very much in that space, and I can just worry about writing stuff. And then sort of like, have you done the author's notes? Have you sent me the have you got a playlist that you did? All that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's important, I think, for modern writers. I think fans expect some access, and obviously. The more you can communicate with fans and the more you sort of clue them into what's going on, the more likely they are hopefully to go out and buy a particular book, but also just have warm, fuzzy feelings about you in general. So through the blog, through Facebook, through Twitter, I try to engage and answer questions, and I send out a newsletter as well, which is quite good. That's gone very well, and people can kind of reply directly to the newsletter to email me, and there's a contact page and stuff. So, and it's all that kind of stuff provides material, really. People asking me questions on writing advice, or I put out a monthly Q&A, that kind of stuff. It gives me contact, and considering I spend most of my time sat behind a keyboard on my own with a page, actually that contact from fans and the feedback and what gets people excited and all that kind of thing is really useful, in terms of just continuing to build on my experience as a writer and trying to deliver stories that people want to read.
Yeah, it's a lot of extra work, though. I mean, you could downplay it, but really, you're giving yourself a lot of extra work just for the benefit of the listeners, and you deserve some appreciation for that. That's for sure. I mean, I read the self-contained narrative and speculative fiction post you did.
Right.
That was excellent. Like, and you have several excellent posts on there that are really helpful to people.
Yeah, well, when I left Games Workshop coming up, well, just over 8 years ago now. I'm trying to remember the dates. And to kind of continue writing and things, and keeping the habit of it. Mark Gascoigne, who was former head of Black Library and now runs Angry Robot Books, I had a chat with him and things. He said, start a blog, and even if you just end up writing about what you had for breakfast, you're just out there and you're getting into the habit of it, of communicating. And basically, not being a particularly, it's odd because you say obviously there's a lot out there, but I'm not a particularly public person by nature. So I started, the angle I took really was kind of giving people writing advice and just talking about my experience as a writer, the day-to-day stuff behind the curtain, as well as the craft. And more of it is about sort of like organizing yourself and how to plan and all that stuff, rather than how to string a sentence together, because I think you just find your own style doing that and through practice. And I would never presume on that level, because I'm always thinking, well, I can actually physically write better than I actually do. I think I'm not, I think as a storyteller, I try to help people with their storytelling and their sense of narrative and planning and all that kind of stuff, rather than how best to write a particular sentence. And then that allowed me to just get into that routine without necessarily having to say what I had for breakfast for 5 days a week.
Yeah, it's amazing how much I don't really believe in external forces, but it is pretty interesting how altruism in your day-to-day actions can reap benefits for yourself. So I think so. It's really it's pretty great. It's a great resource. Yeah, and it's there is an ulterior motive at some point. Actually producing all this material. It allows, at some point, quite a few blog posts sometimes are quite cathartic for me, because I'm wrestling with a particular issue on a story and stuff, and so writing it down and analysing my own process helps me get around a particular thing if I'm stuck or trying to come up with a synopsis or whatever it might be. But also, actually, at some point down the line, 1 year or many, I don't know, but I hope to kind of self-publish some of this stuff. Some short stories and also some writing advice and things like that. So it's all kind of accumulating content for future publications at the same time. So you also had a recent release with Angels of Caliban. I think you and only maybe one other person are kind of the Dark Angels guys, right? Or are you the Dark Angels guy right now?
Well, I was, I suppose. I mean, it started off with Mitchell Scanlon did the first book. Is that right? Yeah, Mitchell Scanlon, and then Mike Lee did the second novel. So, and I when I joined the Horus Heresy team, I quite deliberately, even though I'd done Angels of Darkness for 40k, I deliberately kind of steered away from the Dark Angels, really, because somebody else had already started, if you see what I mean. So I wanted just for my own sanity, a clean slate. That I wasn't trying to pick up on too many storylines and things. And I assumed at that time that there was already a bit of a plan in place of where the Dark Angel story was going. That turned out not to be the case, really. The novels were kind of just written, but there wasn't really any particular thought to how it would continue. So because, as I've just been discussing, I'm a planner by nature, my experience in games development and everything else is that I like to set out my goals and then work out how I get there, narratively and also just in terms of breaking down work. For the Dark Angels, it started. I just kind of decided to put my hand on the tiller a bit at some of the meetings and say, "Well, actually, wouldn't it be cool if?" And then the discussions kind of started, and the other person who kind of picked that up and had a bit of an axe to grind about the Dark Angels was Aaron Dembski-Belden. So he wrote the Savage Weapons short story and Prince of Crows and things. So between us, we kind of started steering the Dark Angels into a bit more relevancy in the Horus Heresy, which was kind of the point. one of the things, the goals we set ourselves, not just for the Dark Ages, for several legions, was to make them part of the Horus Heresy and not guys that their stories about something that happened afterwards, or they turned up at Isfahan, got massacred, and then disappear. Most of the heresy before now has revolved around a few set pieces, such as Prospero, Calth, Cygnus Prime, and the Massacre, and then the Siege of Terror. And there's a whole bunch of guys doing all sorts of stuff across the galaxy at war that we never get to see. So the Dark Angels were part of that. So what did they actually do during Horus Heresy rather than what happened afterwards?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And same with the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, dude. There's sorry, Gav. Since there's 4 people on, a lot of it we might end up talking over ourselves a lot. So our policy today is if you talk, we shut up. And if someone besides me talks, I shut up. And then after that, Snorre and James can sort it out.
Fight amongst ourselves. I was gonna say, that was it was really jarring in the beginning of the Horus Heresy how the story was flowing, and then when it cut, because the first cut was the first Dark Angels book, and then it seemed to have almost nothing to do with what the storyline was going with. So I really am looking forward to having them woven more into it. I actually just finished. What's it called the second Dark Angels book. I'm like way behind in the heresy, so tying them.
Fallen Angels.
Yeah, Fallen Angels.
Yeah.
I just finished that, so tying them in with what was going on around Istvan, especially the ending. Oh my god, that was so great. But I just I'm really looking forward to the Dark Angels getting involved in the story.
Yes, that was the thing, and making the Lion part of sort of like the Imperium Secundus arc, as we'll see, but also. There's other legions out there. Like I said, the 3, the Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard, particularly, you just get kicked about at Istvan, and then you don't really hear anything about them. And although we know, again, they've had certain parts of their story told in articles and things before, we wanted everyone to feel relevant to the heresy, whether they were continuing to fight against Horus or whether they were fighting on the side of Horus. There was 7 years of war to detail before the Siege of Terror, and actually the select few, relatively speaking, legions that actually turn up at the Emperor's Palace, and everybody else doing their own thing. So, it's been nice. And the other advantage I've had, of course, is I've been writing the Dark Angels in 40k with the legacy of Caliban over the last 3 years, with Ravenwing, Master of Sanctity, and the Unforgiven, and that very much. Plays into some of the characters established in the heresy and some of the events, and particularly the Unforgiven at the end, and the big plot that's revealed at the end of that ties directly into some of the scheming I've done on the heresy side of stuff. So that's quite fun being able to dangle threads from one to the other without necessarily telling everybody exactly what happens or is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm very interested in learning about the Dark Angels. My like I tell all the new guests on the show, I'm kind of the recovering competitive 40k player who's learning about the background as we go, and all of these books are new to me, and I'd love to dive into the Dark Angels. I find it very interesting. I'm very interested in kind of the story behind the loyalist Fallen and the traitorous Dark Angels. I'd very much like to learn more about that. Anyways,
that's one of the things we're throwing out there.
Oh, I'm sure there's the Dark Angels rumors are some of the most hilarious and fun to read.
Adam, have you read Angels of Darkness?
No, I haven't read any of it. I've read none.
Start with Angels of Darkness, because there's a line towards the end of that book that will give you goosebumps that won't go away for 2 days.
All right, cool.
It really is simple when it comes to the Dark Angels. There is no Dark Angels. It's called the Alpha Legion.
Oh boy, that's a.
Oh damn! Spoilers.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. Sorry.
Oh man.
Well, the thing I love about Dark Angels fans in particular and stuff is they're as divided as the Legion or the chapter that they support, because like when Angel of Darkness came out and there were certain revelations and Fallen play obviously had quite a prominent role in that, and the ones that were like no, this is heresy, this is terrible, the Dark Angels are the one true, and then the other ones go no, actually, oh no, we may be traitors or whatever it might be. And there is a real division. There's a genuine schism in the fandom, just as there is in the background sort of thing. And those debates and the secrets and lies and what does it all mean goes on forums, just as it goes on in the inner circle sort of thing.
Oh my goodness! Does that give you pause when you go to reveal something? Like, Are you afraid you're going to alienate 20 to 30% of your fan base when you reveal the truth about something?
No, I deliver since Angels of Caliban, since Angels of Darkness, and particularly the reaction to certain parts of that. Whenever I write about the Dark Angels, I go out of my way to stir the pot as much as possible. Because that's what people love. It's what, as much as they might hate me for doing certain things and destroying their chapter or whatever, actually, that is the meat and drink of the Dark Angels, is conspiracy and secrets and not knowing what the truth is. And so for every answer provided, there has to be 2 more questions.
And no one should really be surprised when you do this either.
No, absolutely not. Did anybody else have any questions for the intro?
Not really.
All right, cool. So we're going to take a quick break. Probably talk more about the Nova Open Foundation during the break. And then we're going to come back and dive into The Beast Arises.
The Nova Open Charitable Foundation, NOCF, is proud to announce the opening of the 4th summer season on the 1st of July 2016. The Nova Open created the NOCF to promote the compassionate force of the worldwide community of tabletop wargamers and their willingness to support these causes. Since its inception, the NOCF worked with the miniature wargaming community to raise over $60,000 for charities such as Doctors Without Borders and the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. You can help by purchasing tickets for a range of raffles for armies and miniatures painted by world-class artists. There is a $10 minimum at checkout. Take your chances on any one or all of the nearly 20 online raffle items. Participants can purchase unlimited tickets at $1 per ticket for the following: the Bad Moon Squadron Orc Army, which is the NOCF Premier 2016 Consortium Army, Nova Marines Adeptus Astartes Space Marine Army, Mjolnir Space Marines Army, Flames of World War II Soviet Tank Company. In addition, only 750 tickets are available at $2 per ticket for the following special raffles: Infinity Achilles Limited Edition 10th Anniversary Edition Miniature, Horus Heresy Pride of the 14th Legion Detachment, X-Wing the Emerald Empire Ships. Also, only 750 tickets are available at $2 per ticket for single model prizes. NOCF will raffle 11 models that winners can have delivered to their homes. Buyers can take a look at the models on the NOCF website. They will be shipped to the winner anywhere on the planet with deliverable address. Note that most armies include a storage case donated by KR Multicase. See the website for specifics. Help the mission, spread the word, share the newsletter, blog post, web post, Facebook away. Together we can make this the best fundraising year ever. Tickets for these raffles sell quickly, so make sure you pick up your ticket today. If you have additional questions, please email novacharities@gmail.com. To donate, visit our website at novaopenfoundation.org. Thanks for helping to make a difference.
Greetings, mofos.
Are you out of George Dickel number 8, staring at a broken chess machine?
Well, don't want to spend the rest of the year tied to that couch.
Well, why don't you head on over to the 1 Hour a Night Facebook page and see what exciting stuff is going on there. It's a place to post all your daily progress in the hobby grind, as well as receive and give positive feedback. Also, there are usually a few interesting challenges going on.
That's right. All you have to do is search for 1 Hour a Night on Facebook. That's numeral 1 Hour a Night, all one word. Blood serum tests will be administered prior to approval.
Se til helvete og kom dere vekk. Det ikke en bikkje, det en slags ting. Den imiterer en bikkje, men det ikke det. Kom dere vekk, idioter!
What he said. Welcome back. Thank you for hanging on. And so I'd like to start off with talking about the genesis of The Beast Arises, because I find the very concept of this very interesting. And I think it's been pretty popular with the community who loves the 40K lore. So did someone just say, hey, I think this would be awesome, let's do it? Or was it something that corporate wanted? Or how did it come about, Gav?
I think it's... obviously I wasn't there literally at the Genesis moment, but basically one of the key architects was Dan Abnett. And I think some of it came from sort of his obviously quite deep experience working in comics and the idea of shared franchises and series, but also the idea of an event series like Secret Wars or the Civil War or whatever. So actually bringing some of that comics experience into a more traditional publishing style, I suppose. But also, but I don't know whether that was, he had an idea, phoned up George Mann, who was in charge of Black Library at the time, said, hey, I've got a great idea, or whether he and George were just having a drink over lunch one day and chewing the fat about how comics work or whatever. That particular kind of big bang moment, I don't know. But what happened from my point of view is there was a few authors, well, probably about, I think 6 or 7 of us were kind of brought in for a meeting. And so we've got this cool new idea. We want to do this Black Library specific event, and it's going to be a series of books over a year. And there'll be an installment every month, various authors working on the series, but it'll be a finite number and everyone will know. And initially, obviously, we hadn't actually decided what the event it was going to cover. So we had all these mad, wacky ideas of stuff returning from the dark age of technology and overthrowing the Imperium and all kinds of mad stuff. And then we came back about a month later or whatever and said, could we turn it down just a little bit? Actually, and they were working on I think it must have been 5th edition 40k at the time, and the timeline for that. And they said, well, actually, it'd be nice, because there were all these just like one-line entries. And so we actually, to rein it in just a little bit and stop you all going mad and just destroying the universe, could you pick one thing from the timeline maybe and write about that? So something that nobody knows anything about. It's still very much Black Library specific. This is the only place you can find out. It's not in a codex or a rulebook somewhere except as this. And so the Beast Rises and the Beheading, these 2 entries kind of jumped out. The largest war, to affect the galaxy since the Horus Heresy, and the Beheading, basically the execution of the High Lords kind of things, jumped out from the timeline, and we started working around that. And so that's when, and what we did was because we knew, well, originally it was going to be 13 novels, because although it was going to run from a year, it was going to kind of run from shows how old this was, because this was 4 years ago, I think. 4 or 5 years ago, something quite, 4 years ago, I think. It was a game when it still had Games Days in the UK, so it was going to run from one Games Day UK to the next Games Day UK. And so the first and last were going to be sort of like the big Black Library releases of the Games Day. Okay. So we came up with a whole bunch of storylines, basically, and then kind of threw them around, and then Black Library management and DW kind of came back to us and said, yeah, that's cool, did the Orcs thing and stuff, and took it from there, really.
That's great. And I see, and I guess they I doubt that you did the whole like plot bullet to bullet in those meetings, right? Like stuff was left to the authors.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, really. In the initial meetings, what I think sort of like the third one, or when it was all thumbs up, let's go with this. But basically, what we came up with, and again, me being Mr. Planner, I kind of was pushing hard for this to kind of make sure they had some shape to the series. So we had this kind of sort of like benchmarks of like how it started and how it ended, because that's kind of what was established in the timeline. But between us all, we came up with these cool story beats, basically how each of the 12 novels would end. So not necessarily the details and stuff, but our OMG moments, so that people would read it, and at the end of every book, they'd have a moment which is like, oh my God, what's going on? I have to read the next one. And we know that's cool because they've only got to wait a month till the next installment comes out. So we came up with all these different story beats of the invasion and the various characters. But obviously a lot of the detail came later. So, talking about The Emperor Expects, that was book 3. So there wasn't too many subplots and other characters and things developed by that point. And most of the tone was laid down. Dan wrote I Am Slaughter to the first one and established most of the characters in terms of Corland and Vinand and Vangerich and a few others. And obviously the way it's kind of shaping up, certainly at this stage for The Emperor's Expect, was there's kind of like the 2 main stories, which is the Space Marines and the Imperial Fisting going on, and then there's the what's going on with the High Lords, and then there's the fight against the Orcs, of which, so, we might see it from the Space Marines point of view, or some Imperial Guard, or in the case of The Emperor Expects, focus on the Imperial Navy, and so on, as some of the other characters and subplots build up over the series. And then, just to skip ahead, having done book 8 as well, there were a lot more threads going in than there was in book 3. But also a lot more resolved, because of course that's starting to head towards the end. So as the series developed, the editors were on top of that and making and essentially circulating the notes. And the writing was broken down into 2 stages. Like I said, this started quite a few years ago, really. And we've got the first, I don't know whether, I think book 3 or maybe book 4 was written at the time, and then there was a break, really. And I think it was sort of put on a bit of a back burner with Black Library, and they're planning to change slightly in their emphasis. And then it was sort of resurrected a year and a half ago, and the subsequent volumes started being written. But actually, by the time I was writing book 8, there were still little bits of work being done on book 5. Book 9 and 10 were being written at the same time, so there was a lot of overlap. So there was a lot from the editorial team of having to keep all these plates spinning and make sure it all tied together, because the schedule was really quick at the end, and it wasn't that long ago that Guy Haley finished book 12, I think. So, but there were 4 or 5 books which kind of overlapped quite a lot in terms of when they were actually being written.
That's exciting. It must have been a lot of work for the editing team. They probably kicked butt on this one.
I think the 1 year monthly installment comic book style with a subscription option is pure genius. Mm-hmm. They could do something like this every year forever, and it'd just be, here's my credit card numbers.
Well, I don't know about every year, but certainly, I mean, you're right. It's been really popular, and as you say, and as Adam mentioned earlier, it was that finite end. So you've got something like the Horus Heresy where people are really into it, but nobody's quite sure how big it is and what kind of commitment they're getting into. But with the Beast of Rise, it's 12 books. It's going to be this much. There's definitely going to be one a month. The story keeps its pace. It's really the narrative, not Heresy is part setting, part narrative. There's lots of places to explore. Whereas the Beast of Rise is this big. It's this one big story split over 12 installments. Like you say, it's Game of Thrones kind of storytelling, really. And so, and actually each one being a bit shorter as well. Each one's 50,000 words, which is about half the length of a regular Black Library novel. So that is good, quick fix, not too difficult to keep up, or to read in quite quick succession. So, and people like that, they know what they're getting into. And Black Library have definitely said, not necessarily one a year or even necessarily 12 installments and things, but there will be more of these event series, these kind of fairly rapid fire, finite series that people can just come jump on board. Like I say, there'll be subscriptions and all the rest of it. And the number, and again, going back in history and writing some of the main events that people have heard of or not heard so much about is a great way of kind of exploring the universe of 40K without turning it's a bit more than a single novel that just kind of disappears into the void a bit that was set, in the 34th millennium or whatever, but also not the massive commitment of something like the Heresy.
Yeah, just picking a line out of the timelines is such a great way to write. We've talked about it on the show multiple times, but The Death of Integrity, that's how that ended up, and that's one of the best books I think Black Library has produced.
Well, the interesting is the Space Marine Battle series is based on that idea of just taking something out of any of the kind of various iterations of Space Marine codexes, and either even if it's been written about in some depth or just an entry on timeline, picking something that people already have heard of and then expanding it out. And I think it'll be interesting to see which way Black Library goes with the next event series, because I don't think they've necessarily even decided yet of whether it'll be something that's kind of quite high in the popular consciousness, an event like the Age of Apostasy or the Bad Apple or the whatever, things that people know that they might want in more detail, or whether, like the Beast of Rises, it'll be something really obscure that you can only ever find out about here. We'll have to see which way they go, really.
Oh, man, what was that episode we did recently? I would love to learn more about that. It was The Waning, was it? Where that alien race came out of the Ghoul Stars, and the one Space Marines chapter that has like a mini golden throne on its homeworld. Oh, man, that would be a really cool time to do.
Yeah, definitely. That sort of thing is bang on for it. And there's all kinds of stuff. There's there's the Nova Interregnum when there were 2 Imperiums, or there's I forgot what it is. There's one David Gaiman who really loves he keeps banging the drum for it, I think, which is one of the particular crusades or something. I can't remember which one it is now.
But yeah, the Terra Nova Interregnum, that's the waning happened during that. So yeah, that whole thing would be, it has so many little facets to it, so many horrible, and Cypher's involved in that too. So, I mean, we could tie all that stuff in.
I'm just really glad that we have audiobooks for this series also. A really good audiobook support for this Beast That Rises series is golden for me. Makes it also so much easier to binge consume.
Right, yeah.
I would pay good money for a streaming service though. Like a Black Library radio station that constantly streamed, and you could and there's like a schedule, like, oh, I need to tune in to listen to so and so. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, you have to come up with some like faux Latin for Audible. Black Library can have their own.
Audibilis, yeah.
Audible.
Yeah, well, email them, let them know, they'll probably be open. That was one of the things that kind of came up actually in a recent seminar at Warhammer Fest, which was saying that it's cool kind of discussing stuff in podcasts and on forums and things like that, but actually there's a contact for Black Library, and if you email them and say, I love this series, I love what you did, I love the audio, I love this, it's feedback that an editor or someone can print out and put in front of management and say, people like this. It's like we've had 10 people email in saying, yes, the audio, not just that, the sales figures tell you one thing, but actually also just there is a genuine reaction, I feel, to the Beast That Rises, just talking to people and the buzz about it and everything else, which will not just be translated into sales figures, but also a slightly softer kind of a reaction, if you see what I mean, but I feel good about it that actually doesn't necessarily translate into raw sales figures, but is worthwhile doing.
Yeah, it's
and that kind of thing. The nuances of the audios were really great. Please do more, or streaming. You never know, because that's the thing that someone goes, actually, that is an awesome idea. Why don't we do that?
I think Games Workshop has been recently, very much interested in cultivating goodwill, and I think we'll, if we take anything away from our conversation today, maybe it's that, providing that feedback to help them cultivate that goodwill is a good idea for all of the listeners to do.
Yeah, that kind of outlet for the positivity is so important, because one person with a negative comment is going to be louder than 10 people with positive ones. So like a direct email link to somebody that actually cares about that stuff, where you can contact them and say, this is great, keep doing it, is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it may be both. One of the, talking about like a radio streaming service or stuff. A while back, we did. I thought, what was it? I can't remember what it's called now. We did basically there was a radio play series that we did in audio, The Thousand Rebellions. There wasn't actually 1,000 Rebellions in the end. I can't remember what we called it. Oh, the Transient Rebellion. That was it. It got changed slightly, which was very much that idea of actually taking a proper radio play, no narration, just dialogue and sound effects, and doing, I think, 10 installments or 12 installments. And originally they were going to be part of a podcast and things, and obviously the podcast didn't happen, but they still kept the radio play. But those sorts of things, particularly because Black Library now have their own dedicated audio facilities, they do the majority of recording themselves, they have a sound producer in-house and everything else. That's that just throws fuel on the fire of no, everyone loves the audio stuff, keep going,
Absolutely. So let's switch gears, and I know it's probably been a long time for you, Gav, so I doubly appreciate you coming on to talk us about it. But let's talk about The Emperor Expects a little bit. As you say, the plots are starting to develop. The threads are starting to fetter a little bit, where we're starting to go into different directions. They are coming together, though. Even at this early stage, threads are starting to weave together just as fast as they're weaving apart. And it's been a very exciting series from my perspective. I really like a lot of the political intrigue, and I think you've handled it very well here. It was very cool to watch kind of the how actions that are occurring on Terra are affecting things that are happening, millions of miles away. And I think that I guess that's kind of a duh moment for any good author, but for a reader, it's awesome to see it happen on the page and be surprised by it. I hope to see more things like that where the reader is kind of rewarded with this knowledge that they have being exploited by multiple characters throughout the book.
Yeah, particularly part of the positive reaction has been seeing the politics behind stuff and seeing Terra and the High Lords and how that's all kind of tied into it. So on the one hand, you've still got a strong 40k story, which is very much based about things shooting each other and war and devastation on a galactic scale, particularly with the Beast of Rises. But actually, there's a step removed. There is that actually what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening with the wizard pulling the levers behind the curtain. And that's certainly something, it adds context. It adds context to those, that kind of at the far end, you've got kind of like the pure bolter porn of just like Space Marines killing orcs and stuff. But actually, all the way through from that sort of like the hard line of the battles, you've got all the way back to the interpersonal politics that are going on in the High Lords of Terror, in the council chambers, and part of that is down to the time period it's set in. That actually, because it's not the present day Imperium, because it's not that long after the heresy, relatively speaking, 1500 years, you've still got other certain personalities and institutions still developing, or things haven't quite happened yet. So the ecclesiarchy is very young. The idea of the separation of the Imperial Guard and the Imperial Navy is a relatively new idea. But then foremost in people's minds is the idea that the splitting of the legions was a very important thing. Yeah. So we get to play around with some of those ideas of what the Imperial Fists are up to and their successors and attitudes to the heresy. It's not quite myth, but it is definitely ancient history now and all the rest of it. So you get to do stuff slightly differently than you would do in a 40k story.
Right. I am looking forward to seeing what this last wall business, what kind of reaction they're going to get from, say, the Inquisition. And I think there's going to be a lot of feet dug in or I guess roots dug in here with certain factions not being able to accept what they've been doing. So I think I'm really excited about how that's going to turn out.
I really enjoy the politics behind like the actions of the High Lords and everything, but the character that I really want to hear about is the Distillarius Superior of the Neo-Scotian whiskey. Are we going to get a look into his day-to-day life, anything like that?
That might have to be a spin-off story.
How great would it be to get like a series of little stories
with its own signature whiskey?
Well, no, but I'm talking like all these like secondhand characters. Like someone writes a story about that guy or lady, whoever, or somebody else writes a story about a grot or something that showed up in a book like that no one remembers. That would be an amazing series of short stories.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, actually, I think I don't know whether again it was the timing because it took longer to do than originally planned, or because there was an idea that we could go the full hog in terms of having some audio, some little audios and short stories and stuff like that to do just that, not necessarily a grot, but picking up on some of the slightly more, particularly as each novel kind of introduces certain characters out of the main storylines and kind of follows them from a short way, and then you kind of leave them behind again because the big events move on. But actually following them or getting to catch up with them would be quite fun. But unfortunately, I think that just the necessity of the workload for various writers and the release schedule meant that actually it just ended up focusing on the novels themselves. But
yeah, it's understandable.
There you go, it's a perfect fan fiction.
Yes, I mean, yeah, why not, right? However, I think you're the only one who's really qualified to write a Red Gobbo story.
The Red Gobbo, yeah, that'd be brilliant. Yeah.
Anyways, back to the Emperor Expect. Spaceships. I love spaceships, shooting other spaceships and blowing up, and this was just a wonderful book for that. Your descriptions of these space battles really, I really appreciate it when someone at least tries to know what they're talking about, and it was really, and you did a wonderful job. These were some really cool space battles.
As I've kind of I wrote sort of online, and the dedication in the book, kind of says it all. I'm a huge fan, particularly of kind of like Napoleonic era naval battles. Mm-hmm. One of the things I read when I was growing up were the Hornblower novels, by a guy called C.S. Forrester, and that whole thing, that Age of Sail battles, which kind of pretty much informs half of 3/4 of the Imperial Navy, long lines of battle, men at war blasting at each other with broadsides and stiff upper lips and all that kind of for Kismet Hardy and all that kind of stuff. Trafalgar is kind of like, it runs through me from my earliest teen years, really. And so being able to write about the Imperial Navy, the first time I got to do it was writing background for Battlefleet Gothic, and I got to put in loads of stuff in there, and loads of little references and puns and stuff, which only I ever get. And then coming back to the Emperor Expects, or the Beast Arises, when I got to basically kind of pitch what my story would be, it's like, I'm doing the Imperial Navy. I'm not going to get a chance to do it necessarily in current 40k because, that most of those stories are focused on the ground combat and stuff you can actually field in a 40k army.
Doing a lot of Space Marine
Whereas
stuff.
this is like, no, I'm going to do great big battleships blowing each other up, and also way of showing the size of the Orc threat. This is a galactic threat. It requires a galactic response, really, or at least a sizable response from the Imperial Navy. And it tied in nicely with the way Dan had kind of laid, going back to that politics thing, it tied in nicely with the way he'd laid the groundwork for Admiral Langson and his politicking and how he was ruling ruling over the High Lords, really, and actually being able to put him front and centre in the politics, but also in the battles, and saying, well, this is the Imperial Navy's fight, which it always is. Everyone talks about the Space Marines. The great thing about the Space Marines is they have their own ships. That's what makes them cool. So most of the fighting, most of the response across the Imperium is the Imperial Navy, because they're the ones who can get to places and blow stuff up first. And then the Imperial Guard come along later, escorted by the Imperial Navy. So I think they're the unsung heroes most of the time.
That's true.
I sang them.
Yeah, and our infantry does the die-ins, Navy does the flying, and then fast forward to that scene where the guy bounces off the windshield of the shuttle.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this is actually pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah.
The politicking that has been going on between the Navy, especially with the factioning and such, it really reminds me of Andy Horse Tau trilogy, the Rogue Trader trilogy. Right, it's a very similar, really similar scene, and again, it's going bad no matter what's going on. It's always going bad for someone, and it's really well written, I think, the way it's going on in The Beast Arises, where yes, the Navy was going like, we're going in, we're going to solve this problem, and we're going to be super strong politically. And it's not quite how it goes down. Next book, yes, we have another solution. We're going to try the exact same thing, just another faction, to see if we can do it better.
Yeah.
So, I think
it's one of those, because we're sort of like being British and sort of like the Navy in our own history and the importance of it and how it defined us for many generations, really, kind of really played into what we could do. Well, what I did with the Emperor Expects, really, and the greatest of traditions and all that kind of stuff. And so, but also the sheer hubris that comes with that kind of attitude. And so for me, it's a bit of a War of the Worlds moment, really, of the Navy being brought low in a sense of like running into a problem they can't solve with big guns.
Yeah.
Much like we did as a nation.
I thought it was, I get it like harkens to what's his name, the chief tactical officer on Star Trek Enterprise. His dad practically like wanted to disown him for joining Starfleet instead of the Imperial Navy or the British Navy. Yeah. So the Navy aspect of things leads in two different directions, and I wanna do the simplest first. Is I love the it's not just a war between factions, but factions within factions. The only faction we've seen so far, at least by book 3, that doesn't have internal strife are the assassins. Everyone else is at each other's throats.
Yeah, well, I'd say and the Orcs.
Oh, well, yeah, duh. Well, I mean, they're the superior species in the galaxy. Why would they have internal strife like that? Well, actually, I mean, when there's a WOG, yes, but...
that's kind of... I play on that a lot more in Book 8, but actually that is one of the themes talking about the series, which is the juxtaposition of the Orcs, who are always infighting, always... Mm-hmm. One of the reasons they've never become the galactic threat is because
they're always fighting
that's
themselves.
Kind of imploding, and actually this time they haven't, and it's the Imperium that's imploding, and that's the switch, basically.
That's great.
But yeah, the assassins, I suppose... It's Vangovich's personality as much as anything that rules it. He's in many ways he's overstepping his mark, and again I tried to get that a little bit in book 3, and certainly with the way the Inquisitor Representative Vinand deals with it, because it's not he's the gun. He doesn't get to choose where he's pointed. It's supposed to be the assassins are just a weapon. They're deployed by the High Lords. He doesn't get to choose who he.
She plays him like a fiddle.
Yeah, he was really he was really on point and scheming quite a bit in the first 2 books, and then in the 3rd book, I felt like he just got slapped down.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, I think, just because one of the other developing themes is of the Inquisition, kind of quite navel gazing at the moment. Or it's certainly Vangovich's opinion that. They've taken their eye off the ball, that the Inquisition aren't doing the job they're supposed to be doing. The Inquisition are arguing like orcs, schmorks, whatever. They're not the sort of the threat that we're here for. You've got big guns, you've got navies and space marines and everything else. You go and kill orcs. The real threats, are the ones that we still have to deal with, and that will play out over the series again of the factionalizing within the Inquisition, but also. What is the real threat? Is the Orcs the real threat, or is there something else going on that the Inquisition, with that slightly more elevated viewpoint of the galaxy and the Imperium, are actually is that distraction warranted? The fact that they've not been on the ball as far as the Orcs threat's concerned, because they're still looking at something else.
Yeah, I from the first episode, or the first kind of book, in our first episode on the first book, we kind of got the idea that, yes, the implosion of the Imperium and its kind of eventual endpoint in 40K kind of starts here. And this is about the beginning of the end of the Imperium. And I'm just very curious as to how the Beast weaves into that and what players are involved in their genesis in the galaxy. It could be anybody, really. It could be, we could be looking at, Chaos. We could be looking at Eldar. We could be looking at we could be looking at the Necron tier. Who knows, right? And it's it'd be very exciting to see how that happens. And quite honestly, how much, new exposition we can get on the Orcs as a species. Cause it's always been kind of there. We've already had like a few things that were more rumors than actual fact be revealed as fact in the second book. So I'm very curious as to see how that develops. And a few friends have told me that we're getting, we're not getting any protagonist from the Orc side of things, but we're definitely going to be getting some interesting characters coming up. And that's something I'm very, very, very much looking forward to.
Yeah. The idea of it, again, going back to that original sort of concept of, the series, which was something that was an existential threat to the Imperium, and actually everyone writes off the Orcs. Everyone's always writes off. It's either going to be the Necrons or the Tyranids or Chaos. And actually, so one of the things we went is let's show what the Orcs can do and why sometimes you have to take them seriously, and part of this spun out of certain things, discussions and stuff that we had, bearing in mind. Events leading up to Horus Heresy and the Triumph of Eleanor and all this kind of stuff, and the the sort of orcs that are supposed to develop in some of these huge empires that haven't been penetrated for centuries and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the Beast Arises came out of that. We've already been told on the timeline it's the greatest war the galaxy's seen. But actually, what is a war? And one of the most interesting things is not only making the orcs a legitimate threat, but extending the idea of what the orcs are. And we know from established background or established previous background, sort of like the idea of escalation, that orcs orcify their surroundings, but also their own society. So they start off quite small, but as more of them grow, they start to get certain odd boys. They start to develop certain, the mechs start to unlock certain genetic memories of things. And as they get more and more and more, they build bigger machines, and then they start building gargants and then the population pressures force them into a war and all this kind of stuff. You go, and what if that bit doesn't stop? That's all we've seen up till now is basically gargants and a big war. But actually, this isn't a war. This is something else. This is orcs going up to 11, and actually the beast himself, but also the army and what other facets of orcdom can we unlock? If we pull them up to level, higher levels, these guys go up to level 100, not a level 50. So, in terms of technology and odd boys and societal changes and everything else.
So, like, you're talking about maybe a correlation or kind of a parallel between the orc as an individual, even thinking about fighting makes him bigger. Even the expectation of war makes them grow. Where the same for society, maybe. Like, the more the society... the more orc society fights, and the larger it's allowed to steamroll, the more sophisticated it gets. That is an exciting prospect.
That's what we thought. We came up. It was, and it kind of went back to this whole idea of what were the old ones doing when they designed the orcs? Mm-hmm. Well, they created this self-sustaining army. That's what they are. We don't quite know which old ones created them. The orcs got their own myths and legends, and there's been bits and pieces sort of in various codexes, all of it a bit mishmashed and not really hung together particularly well, which is fine but the idea is the orcs are a conquering force that basically are self-sustaining. You can set them off and they go. Mm-hmm. And obviously there were lots of cataclysms 60 million years ago and all the rest of it. So the orcs are this army on the without a commander. It's really the idea, I think, that that's why they always end up imploding and things, because was that built into them, or was that actually just a feature of that? There was never the right circumstances for them to become what they always intended to be. So part of the idea is, well, actually during the dark age of technology, when there wasn't anyone running the galaxy anyway, the elder of created a chaos god that's eaten them. Humanity aren't anywhere to be seen. Actually, the orcs are running the show a lot of the time, and some of those massive empires that had to be destroyed by the Great Crusade. What happens if one of those returned, mm-hmm. and what would that look like? And that's the point. It was an empire. It wasn't just. This is the creation of an empire, not just a force of nature that's going to raise everything and move on, and then eventually dissipate. This is creating as well as destroying. So what would the orcs create?
And it's basically a stray bullet, that could be putting us in putting the galaxy in danger when it comes to Gazgul as well. Like that's kind of what's being hinted at in some of the new background, is that kind of Gazgul is this glue that's starting to hold the orcs together, and we could be looking at something like that happening again.
Yeah, again, that was one of the fun things we had. It casts a what if into current events a little bit of mm-hmm. like, that was the greatest war then. Well, it's been quite a long time. Yeah. Are they due another one? It's like the big one. It's like the Yosemite going up or whatever.
A 10,000-year event. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there kind of a prohibition, spoken or otherwise, against writing from the orcs' point of view?
Not necessarily. I think it's very difficult to do. Guy Haley does it quite well in Baneblade. I did a little bit at the start of the Purging Cuddlers, but it's a bit comedy, cockney, orc speak, really. And it's hard to maintain orcs as a serious kind of threaten things for a sustained period for the entirety of a novel. I think
Yeah,
C.L. Werner did one in the Fear the Alien book and stuff. So I don't think there's no ban on it. But a bit like in the early Heresy books, when the Primarchs are only ever seen from somebody else's point of view, we felt that the Orcs actually being unknowable, being this terrible menace that you don't actually get to see from their point of view, adds more to the Orcs in a way. And although people are craving Orc background in a way, and they want to see Orc stories and things, you'd render it knowable and a bit like the Emperor, really. You know, as soon as you understand, if you had a glimpse inside, then suddenly it changes your perspective of what the Orcs are. And I think even the Orcs don't necessarily understand themselves what's going on. So I'm not necessarily saying never, and I don't know if any of the other guys do anything by the end of the series, but certainly from my point of view, what we talked about was it was very much the Orcs as threat, an external threat, rather than ever seeing inside them.
Because your Path of the Eldar series is easily some of the best 40k books that I've read, and I thought it'd be how crazy it'd be to have like a Path of the Mech Boy, Path of the Knob, Path of the Weird Boy.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it could be done. I think Guy, like I say, did some really good stuff to kind of, because he got the speech down right, and in terms of it wasn't really like the comedy stuff or the semi-comedy stuff that we do in the colour text and stuff, and he made them feel like characters as well. So, and I think it'd do really well for that reason. I don't think you could do too many though. They're just not that. They're interesting and they're cool, but essentially, Story of an Orc is quite. I suppose actually the Path thing, the Mech Boy and the stuff like that. I mean, that'd be quite cool. And I'm just remembering Bill King's old text from Where the Orcs and stuff, where we're following the Gretchen around and all that kind of stuff. There's enough there to make it entertaining, I suppose. It just required the will.
You'd need the right point of view characters to do something like that, I think, and things like Gretchen or things like captives and or at least orcs with maybe kind of a bit of a screw loose that might be a little bit unique as a point of view character might work, and it's something I'd love to explore.
I guess reading 3 novels written in Cockney wouldn't be the best thing ever either.
But that's the thing. I don't think we'd do that. But that's the other thing is like how we do that because it kind of gives you an idea. It's a nice snapshot of like the football hooligan thug kind of, and it's a bit Tolkien as well. He kind of sort of gave them these sort of urbanized London accents kind of thing. But actually, in the same way that there's no kind of weird. Well, there's a few weird things in Path of the Eldar in terms of dialogue, but generally, they're Eldar talking to other Eldar, so you don't actually have to manipulate the dialogue in such a way to make it obvious. It's what they're saying rather than how they're saying that becomes important. So if it was just an Orc book, I suppose, then there are certain things you could do just to make it. I suppose it's whether you could still relate to the characters, but if you could do it with Eldar, I suppose you can definitely do it with Orcs.
We're coming almost on an hour, and I definitely want to get into a few more things regarding characters. There are some great characters in The Beast Arises. There are some good recurring characters, such as Venan really started to shine in this, as we've already kind of discussed. The way that she kind of plays everyone and at the meetings, and unfortunately is punished for her greatness. In this book, she's a very interesting character, and I thought that the relationship between Captain Kulik and First Lieutenant Schaffenbeck, I thought that was one of the best new characters I've seen. They're kind of I don't know how much or if we're going to see them at all in the future, but I really enjoyed those characters. They had a wonderful dynamic. And I love how they interacted with each other, and I loved how they helped explore some of the daily life of the Navy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're for, really, I suppose. They were vehicles for that. But it was kind of based on what I was mentioning earlier, sort of being brought up on these sort of naval fiction books and things. And the captain and his first lieutenant, it's Picard and Riker kind of thing. There was always a dynamic in naval situations like that. The sub commander and his XO, whatever it might be. It's always a double team, no matter what the personality of because the guy in charge who's running things, who is God on the ship. That's just always the way it is, and then this guy has to get the stuff done, and in between. But also, it's just the reality of the guys that are going on 5-year-long patrols together. It's like really running to the same bit, I suppose, with Space Marine. Sometimes we go, you've been fighting alongside Brother Bob for literally 150 years. What do you talk about? Well, you don't really. We have to kind of make it a bit artificial, but it's the same. I try to get across that idea that these two guys, Kulik and Schaffenbach, know each other so well. They are family. They are brothers. They've gone through everything together. And although they are still absolutely the guy in charge and sort of like superior and the guy below him, but actually their companionship is just as important, because when you're on a 5-year patrol and you're not going to see anyone a friendly face for that amount of time, the people around you are the ones that keep you sane, but also the ones you get to know. You've shared each other's sweat. You've been in that same. You've been in battles together. You've literally made decisions that saved hundreds, thousands of lives. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I love writing character fiction. So they were the characters I wanted to write about in this one.
Yeah, their relationship was as close to, like, I guess, being married as any high-ranking officer is allowed to be, because they, like, I reminded of any of the things that my wife and I do, like, just without telling the other one, but it's the right thing to do anyways. Or like when Schaffenbach invites the admiral over to the ship for dinner. The captain wouldn't have done that, but he realizes, well, you know what, we should probably do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's
great.
The calmer head that prevails sometimes, Kulik's a little bit headstrong and a little bit, it's a little bit full of himself sometimes, a little bit pompous or whatever. And so Schaffenbach's the one who kind of he tamps down the flames left in his wake occasionally, and then that's what. And I like that idea, and little just things. I like the idea that because Kulik's quite religious, and religion is quite a big part. The ecclesiarchy is quite an ongoing theme in the whole series. So Schaffenbach blasphemes quite often, and he just have this little. You can just imagine he just says it all the time without even thinking about it. Like, don't blaspheme. When he's just like saying "Emperor's balls" or whatever, it's like, don't blaspheme.
Watch your mouth.
And those little ticks that everybody has when they live with someone, like I say, they are the married couple basically, who understand each other. They have got their own little language and all the rest of it.
That's great.
And it was good fun to write that.
Their relationship was really deepened by the Schaffenbach's secret of why he didn't want to become a captain, and then he finally reveals it to him when he thinks that they're going to die, and that just kind of brings them that little bit closer and gives you that insight into their relationship.
Yes, yeah. I mean, one of the fictional relationships I've always admired in terms of writing comes from the Hornblower books. Hornblower, for quite a lot of the series, has a lieutenant called Bush, and then when he's an admiral, he has Bush as his flag captain and stuff, because. And the two have this dynamic, they're a crutch for each other, but their personalities interlink in such a way. So although the personalities aren't duplicated, that idea of this dual entity that's required to run the ship kind of carried on with that. And it made it easy to write in a way. Their scenes just wrote themselves quite often, because once I got into their heads, their interactions were just natural.
That's great. Now, I know that James has a favorite character. In this series. Who gets to do a lot of fun stuff in this book as well.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about the assassins. Who, because obviously to us, all the characters were introduced by Dan Abnett in the first book, but I was wondering if you guys kind of like discussed or fought over who would get to write certain scenes or have certain reveals. Because each of the characters seems to have their own focus in different books, and I was wondering if you guys had discussed amongst yourselves in like writers' meetings and things like that.
Not at that level, I don't think. So as I say, we sort of talked fairly big plot arcs and things, and like I said, I think really it was just the way Dan set the tone and Rob picked it up in book 2, which kind of started those arcs, and just the the experience, I suppose, of looking at how somebody else is doing characters and thinking, okay, well, in that book they were quite heavily focused, so we're going to turn the attention onto this guy. Whether how much that carries on in some of the other books varies a bit, but knowing that there's kind of like a double pacing going on. Each book needs its own little self-contained story, which has got its own beats and pacing and ups and downs. But actually, the series itself and the characters' arcs need their own pacings and things like that. So, like you say, Vangerich is kind of slightly riding high, and then suddenly he's sort of had his legs taken out from under him a little bit with the actions of Rhinand and the Inquisition and stuff. And similarly with Langston, gets himself outmaneuvered and stuff, then will rise again and all the rest of it. So we have to I don't know whether there wasn't really a plan for that necessarily, but that kind of what develops. And as authors, when we look at, because obviously we got to read the previous books, certainly in the beginning we got to read the previous books before writing our own ones, we were able to pick up those threads and maybe our own little peccadillos come to the fore as well. So we're looking at slightly different, emphasising slightly different characters or different subplots, because that's how we see more of the Imperium and where the power is, but also the characters that we're naturally attracted to writing in certain ways and things, which I think, like I say, it kind of, it's nice because it means you don't necessarily follow a purely linear path of one character always being the headline or the protagonist and the other characters always being slightly subservient in terms of the plot. And for me, with my background, having written Inquisitor and stuff like that, the Inquisition was quite a focus. Having a chance to play around with it was a great opportunity. So it was just natural that I suppose I kind of placed them slightly more in the ascendancy while I was writing about them. It was a conscious decision, but also it just plays on my own experiences, I suppose, and what I like writing about, sort of the infighting with the Inquisition and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it was even more surprising than the moon showing up over Terra at the end was the brofist moment between Langston, who basically made himself god on Terra, and the Inquisitor who shafted poor Venand. I thought I was very surprised by that scene, and I think that kind of thing, like you say, the OM, I guess E in this concept, in this context.
Don't blaspheme, Adam.
There's some pretty great OME moments here, and I'm really, really having fun with the very urgent yet desperately frustrating kind of feel or voice or pacing to this series.
I guess if I'd have been one of the writers on the board, I would have fought tooth and nail to be able to write Tybalt, the Averser Assassin's final reveal, because he hasn't had any lines. He's just in his little coffin every time we see him, but he's got to come out sometime, right?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things we kind of pick up on. Again, a little recurring thing, like it's a bit of a Chekhov's gun, really. There's never saw assassin. If he's not unleashed on someone by the end of the series, then
why did you write about him?
So, but also as a reader, you know he's there and he's going to get unleashed at some point. So it's tempering us delivery and anticipation, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Just teasing
us.
That's
fantastic. So I think we're getting long here. And I would love to hang on to your ear for hours, but it's getting on late there too. But did anybody have any other questions they wanted to add to the Emperor Expects portion of the discussion?
It might be kind of, I don't know, obvious, but obviously Admiral Lansing had the titular line from the book. I was just wondering if you scoured the book for the title, or if you had the title and you put that in his speech.
Oh no, the title was always there really from the outset, because again, I suppose it's what I find myself having to explain. Certainly of when I was growing up, Nelson and Trafalgar we were taught about it at school. Very vivid memories actually of when I was about 9 or 10 at school, learning about Trafalgar and the signal that Nelson sent at the start of Battle of Trafalgar to the fleet, which was England expects every man to do his duty. And that was his order to battle. And so the Emperor Expects was just the naval phrase in my head all the way through. But of course, not everyone gets that. But that's the idea. And that speech, it just kind of the Navy at their finest. And even at that moment, Langston being at his finest, although we've seen him as this conniving, ambitious, venal politician, you have to remember he's come up through the Imperial Navy, and they don't breed weak men. It just doesn't happen. And actually, for all of his other faults and the reasons why he gets there and stuff, it's like, he's actually still a top. I didn't want him to be wholly irredeemable, because that's just easy. The fact is, he's a really accomplished naval commander as well. And then so he has this quite uplifting speech. I didn't necessarily know whether, when I came up with the title, whether somebody was going to use it in the book, but it kind of made sense as I was writing it that he would fell into that role, and so therefore he ended up using the Emperor Expects every man kind of equivalent.
It just had like
so it was the title was pretty much there almost day one.
Okay, I just had like a chicken or the egg thing in my head, so it's cool to hear that the title was first and then the speech came.
More of a theme, I guess, That's interesting. So our sound doctor, he's a literal sound doctor. He's a doctor of sound. He's got a doctorate in
soundology,
music. You know what? I don't know what his doctorate actually is. Doctor Sound of the Soundification had one very specific question. So since he spends hours editing our shows, I'd be remiss to not ask it. So with the we talked about doing other shorter series. If you could pick one, what would it be to do?
Well, I don't know if it'd be shorter, but having written some stuff about the ecclesiarchy later on, particularly doing a bit more with the Black Templars and stuff, and some conversation stuff I haven't with people recently about various things I've done in the past, I would absolutely love to write or work on a series set during the Age of Apostasy, the Reign of Blood in particular, the rise of Gog Van Dyer and the birth of the Sisterhood and all that kind of stuff. I think that's just amazing. So that's the one I'd always, I've been banging on to Black Library to do for years, really. In terms of you should just do this. Right, it's just right. If you think this setting is cool, then the founding of the Ordo Hereticus, all this cool stuff that I got to make up and incorporate into the First System of Battle Codex. You go, there's a huge story there, and it's got Black Templars aligning with the Mechanicus, all this kind of stuff. So Age of Apostasy all the way.
So hold on. I just need, pardon me, Gav, but I need to speak directly to my listeners right now. All right, everybody, listen. We need Gav Thorpe to head the Age of Apostasy series for Black Library. So we need you to go out into the world and ask Games Workshop and Black Library to bring this for us, and also tie in the brand new Sisters of Battle Codex with it. Maybe Gav would like to write a new codex. That would be lovely.
Get on those emails, people.
Just open your email and type in Black Library. Take care of that for us, folks. This is a thing that needs to happen because it sounds awesome. All right, excellent. Does anybody else have anything to talk about for Emperor Expects?
No, actually, well, I'm not going to speak for anyone else here, but Jason just sort of stole my question here. I was about to say, what kind of other specific post-Horus Heresy thing would you like to see made, even if you don't write it yourself? But you convinced me. I want that series. I want to see the Age of Apostasy.
It would have so many great, strong female characters, too. Like, it would just be the perfect series. Just make sure you include David Annandale, because he knows also how to write interesting female or interesting Sisters of Battle characters anyway.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I'd be all over it, basically. I mean, it's just, why not?
We're just going to talk like it's actually going to happen. If you don't mind. All right, cool. All right, guys, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to close out the show. Hey, Masters of the Forge listeners, are you looking to expand your Warhammer 40,000 gaming group?
Do you want to start a 40k club in your area?
Do you want the people you attract to be like-minded mofos?
Do you want to advertise your YouTube channel?
Or even attract more subscribers to your hobby blog or online community?
Then what better way than to advertise on the Masters of the Forge podcast?
All we ask of you is that you email us at mastersoftheforge@gmail.com or message us on Facebook with a full text of your advertisement, including the region in which you live and any contact information people can use to get a hold of you.
We will have one of our many tech servitors read your advertisement on the air. We promise not to make fun of you.
Though we can't always predict the actions of our servitors, you really can't find good help these days.
No, you can't.
This is Gav Thorpe, and you're listening to the Masters of the Forge, where the world of 40k comes to life on your tabletop. This is Gav Thorpe, Carl. Purchases are not progress. Stop it. Stop it.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us. We had a little extra long episode this week, but I don't think anybody is going to mind that. Gav Thorpe, thank you so much for being on the show. I know that, you've been working so hard at helping cultivate the community. And I hope that you can come on again sometime, but anytime that it seems like we're trying to take advantage, just tell us no. What an English phrase, sod off.
No, it's cool. I love coming on and chatting to people, and definitely. But when you get around to Beast Must Die, and you've done the Beast Must Die book 8, I'll happily come back on and we can talk about that and see how you think. It'd be interesting for me to hear how you think the series has developed and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Because I obviously I've got a certain perspective on it, but actually it's great to just the good, the bad, and the ugly of just 3 books in is one thing. 8 books in, is it still delivering on the expectations? How do you still see stuff going? So yeah, 5 months time, 5 weeks time, whatever it is, how long it takes you to read.
Well, I just ordered book 4 on Amazon today, so we'll I'm sure we'll be starting that up pretty soon. I at first I was a little concerned about bringing you in so early in the series, but making the offer to come in on book 8 to get kind of a comparison of the 2 viewpoints, I think that is an excellent idea, and we would love to have you on again.
Great.
Excellent. So I guess we'll I just wanted to communicate to the listeners real quick. We probably won't do an On Your Tabletop for Base to Rises at all until the end, I think. I don't know how you guys feel about that, Snorre, but I think that makes sense considering so much is being revealed as time goes on. We can just do like one On Your Tabletop for the whole series. And if Games Workshop or Black Leopard Digital wants to do a supplement, then we won't have to do it. So, or not that I would love to do it, but it would be a waste of time if they end up doing it. So we're going to wait till the end. And if nothing comes of it from Black Leopard Digital, we'll just do one at the very end of the series. We'll do like a whole episode on it. So
a whole episode? I think we're going to need a couple.
For all the missions and stuff.
You definitely need a Beast Cruel kill team mission, whatever else you do.
Yes! We'll come up with some Beast Cruel stats and do a Zone Mortalis mission where he just goes around punching people in the face.
And or ribcage or spine.
No, he has to roll. He has a random chart to see where he punches them because he has to think about it. He's like, okay, do I punch him in the face or the stomach? Do I break his legs? So you just have a D6 roll to determine how he punches them every turn. All right, cool. That's awesome. Again, thanks so much, Gav Thorpe, for your time. We really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Thanks a lot, you guys. So next episode, don't know what it is, but until then...
Play the game the way you want to.
Excellent. Nailed it.
This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com. The music used in this podcast was made by Podod of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission.
It's such a good feeling to play games your way. It's such a happy feeling, 40K'ing away. And when you throw dice with story in mind, it's such a wonderful way to unwind. It's a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling you know that we'll be back when the fortnight's new, and we'll have new ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. We will too.